Hello, I'm Cleve Moeller, the original author of Matlab and one of the founders of MathWorks. It's the 20th anniversary of the MathWorks, so we've been collecting some of our history. I thought you'd like to know a little bit about the original origins of Matlab. I'm going to go back not 20 years, but 50 years, and tell you about three men that were very important influences on my life: J.H. Wilkinson, George Forsythe, and John Todd. J.H. Wilkinson was a mathematician of the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, England. Here's a picture of him in 1951 at the console of the Pilot Ace, one of the world's first digital computers. Wilkinson helped build the Pilot Ace and then started matrix computations on the Pilot Ace. He went on to become the world's leading authority on matrix computation. At about the same time in Southern California, these people were at the Institute for Numerical Analysis at UCLA. George Forsythe is in the center of the picture, John Todd is over his shoulder, and Olga Towsky-Todd is the only woman in the picture. When the center was dissolved in 1954, Forsythe went to Stanford, and the Todds went to Caltech. I became a freshman at Caltech in 1957. I decided to major in mathematics. Here's the faculty of the math department at Caltech in the late 50s, and the Todds are over there. I took numerical analysis from John Todd. He not only introduced me to numerical analysis, but he also introduced me to the computing. This is the Burroughs 205 Datatron, Caltech's first substantial computer, and one of maybe only a dozen computers in Southern California at the time. This was a vacuum tube machine with 4,000 words of drum memory. We programmed in absolute numeric machine language and punched the programs on paper tape. One of the things I did under Todd's direction was invert Hilbert matrices. Here's some output from one of my first computer programs, 1960. Todd suggested that I go to Stanford for graduate school and work with his friend George Forsythe. Forsythe was a math professor, but he was in the process of establishing Stanford's first computer science department. We spent a lot of time sitting here at the PDP-1, DEC's first computer. It was a personal computer. It filled a whole room, but only one person could use it at a time. Here's a photograph of the organizing committee for the 1964 Gatlinburg Conference on Numerical Algebra. Wilkinson, Givens, Forsythe, Householder, Henrizi, and Bauer. All important figures in numerical analysis, and all who have algorithms or work named after them in Matlab today. Here's a page out of my PhD thesis under Forsythe's direction. Here's the calculation of the eigenvalues and eigenfunctions of the L-shaped membrane. This figure is now the MathWorks logo. Here's some of my punched cards for my program that solves systems of linear equations. 15 years later, this would become Matlab's backslash operation. Forsythe and I wrote this book, published in 1967, about solving linear equations. It was cited to the Association of Computing Machinery as an important early textbook in computer science because it contained actual software, working software, programs in ALGOL, Fortran, and PL1 for doing linear equations. About the same time, Wilkinson and his colleagues were publishing programs in ALGOL, algorithms in ALGOL, to do matrix eigenvalue calculations. These were collected together in this handbook edited by Wilkinson and Reinsch. Wilkinson would visit the United States every summer, teach a short course at the University of Michigan, and then go on to Argonne Laboratory outside Chicago. People at Argonne were taking Wilkinson's ALGOL, translating it to Fortran to make it more widely available. I joined that project, which became the IcePack project. IcePack for Eigensystem Package. Here's the user's guide for IcePack. That was followed by LinPack, a collection of, again, Fortran programs for solving linear equations. This was not a translation of other algorithms, but were designed from scratch. Here are the authors of LINPACK in 1979, Jack Dungara, me, Pete Stewart, and Jim Bunch. Jack's car at the time had a LINPACK license plate. I wanted to have my students have access to LINPACK and IcePack without writing Fortran programs. So I read this book by Nicholas Wirth. Wirth was later to develop Pascal, but this was before Pascal. I learned how to parse computer languages from this book, and I took Wirth's design of a parser and wrote the first Matlab using Fortran and with matrices as the only data type. Here's some of my source code for the first Matlab. This was dated 1977. There's about 2,000 lines of Fortran in this program. Here's the first user's guide, the first documentation for Matlab, published by the Computer Science Department of the University of New Mexico, where I was in 1981. Here's some output for the first version of Matlab. This is the list, this is help. This is the list of all the functions in Matlab. 80 functions. There are now 8,000 functions in Matlab. There were no M files, no toolboxes. It was a simple matrix calculator. You can still run this Matlab code today, but these were the simple kind of things that Matlab could do. Graphics. Here's portable machine independent graphics at the time. This was the first Matlab. That's all there is to it. In 1979, I spent a sabbatical year at Stanford University. I taught CS237, numerical analysis. Half the students were numerical analysis students, and they were bored with the Matlab part. It wasn't a very impressive computer language. It wasn't numerical analysis research. But the other half of the students in this course were students from engineering at Stanford. They were doing things that I didn't know anything about, control theory, signal processing, and they loved Matlab. Matlab was very useful to them. They showed it to their friends. They showed it to some of their colleagues. One of those colleagues was Jack Little, who'd been a student at Stanford a few years earlier, and he saw Matlab's potential for control theory and signal processing. Jack and I went on to found the MathWorks in California in 1984, and that brings us to the beginning of our first year of Matlab.